A shocking request is coming from your soulmate. Heaven wants you prepared. My beloved child, don't skip. Listen carefully, because this story begins on a night when everything feels ordinary, yet something deep inside refuses to let you look away. Imagine a person who has carried unspoken emotions for far too long, standing at the edge of a decision that could change both their life and yours. They have rehearsed these words countless times, only to let fear silence them before they could ever be spoken. But tonight feels different. Tonight, they know they cannot keep hiding behind uncertainty forever. Stay till the end, because what unfolds next becomes the most emotional chapter they have ever faced. For months, they convinced themselves that silence was the safest path. They buried their feelings beneath busy schedules, responsibilities, and distractions, hoping time would make everything easier. Instead, every passing day made one truth impossible to ignore. No matter how much life changed around them, the memory of your connection continued to return in the quiet moments. It wasn't because destiny demanded it or because the future was already written. It was because some experiences leave a lasting impact on the human heart, reminding us of the people who helped shape who we are. Listen carefully, because this changes everything. One evening, while reflecting on the past, they realized they had been asking the wrong question. They had spent so much time wondering whether they should continue hiding their emotions that they forgot to ask whether hiding had ever truly brought them peace. The answer arrived with startling clarity. Silence had protected them from difficult conversations, but it had also protected them from healing, understanding, and the possibility of growth. That realization became the turning point they never expected. Stay till the end, because something huge is waiting for you. They began writing down every thought they had been too afraid to say aloud. At first, the words came slowly. Then they poured onto the page faster than they could keep up. Every apology, every memory, every expression of gratitude, and every unspoken feeling finally found a place to exist. As they read those pages back to themselves, they noticed something remarkable. The fear that had controlled them for so long was beginning to lose its power. Honesty, even in private, was already changing them. Days passed, and they couldn't stop thinking about one simple request they wished they had made long ago. It wasn't a request for promises or certainty. It wasn't a request for perfect answers. It was simply a request for one sincere conversation where both hearts could speak honestly without fear of judgment. They realized that meaningful connections are strengthened not by pretending everything is perfect but by having the courage to communicate when life becomes complicated. Listen carefully. This story is not about predicting the future. It is about preparing the heart for the possibility that life sometimes presents us with unexpected opportunities to speak, forgive, appreciate, or reconnect. The person in this story began preparing themselves for that possibility. They stopped rehearsing imaginary conversations and started becoming the kind of person who could listen with patience, speak with kindness, and accept whatever outcome came with grace. What happened next changed everything. Instead of carrying regret into every tomorrow, they chose to carry gratitude instead. They thanked every lesson that had taught them resilience. They appreciated every challenge that had strengthened their character. They even became thankful for the silence because it had revealed how valuable honest communication truly is. Looking back, they realized they had spent years searching for peace in circumstances when it had actually been growing quietly inside their own heart. Stay with me, because the story isn't over yet. As they continued changing, other people began noticing the difference. They became calmer during disagreements, more thoughtful in conversations, and more willing to express appreciation without waiting for special occasions. The greatest transformation wasn't found in dramatic moments. It appeared in everyday choices, choosing understanding over assumptions, compassion over pride, and sincerity over fear. Those quiet decisions slowly reshaped every relationship in their life. Then came the request they never imagined they would be ready to make. It wasn't shocking because it was mysterious. It was shocking because it required complete vulnerability. They wanted to ask for honesty. They wanted to ask for forgiveness where forgiveness was possible. They wanted to ask for one chance to speak openly without pretending to be someone they were not. For the first time, they understood that asking for an honest conversation takes far more courage than hiding behind silence ever could. Listen carefully, because this is the heart of the story. Sometimes the most life-changing requests are not grand gestures. They are simple words spoken with sincerity. Can we talk? Can we listen? Can we be honest about what we've learned? Those questions have the power to open doors that fear keeps closed. Whether the answer leads to reconciliation, friendship, closure, or simply greater understanding, choosing honesty is never wasted. As the sun rose on a new morning, they no longer felt trapped by the weight of everything left unsaid. They felt prepared, not because they knew exactly what tomorrow would bring, but because they knew who they wanted to be when tomorrow arrived. They wanted to be someone who valued kindness before pride, truth before assumptions, and gratitude before regret. That quiet decision became the beginning of a completely new chapter. So if there is one message hidden within this story, let it be this: prepare your heart, not because you can predict the future, but because life sometimes surprises us with opportunities we never expected. Be ready to speak with honesty, to listen with compassion, to forgive with wisdom, and to appreciate the people who have helped shape your journey. The most meaningful moments rarely arrive with certainty. They arrive when ordinary people choose extraordinary courage. And in that courage, a new beginning quietly becomes possible, one built not on fear or fantasy, but on truth, respect, hope, and the enduring power of an open heart. My beloved child, don't skip. Listen carefully, because after preparing their heart for what they believed would be an ordinary conversation, they realized that nothing about this moment felt ordinary anymore. Every step they took seemed to carry the weight of every unspoken word from the past. Their heart raced with questions they could no longer silence. What if this was the opportunity they had been hoping for? What if this was the moment they finally stopped letting fear make every decision? Stay till the end, because the request they were preparing to make would reveal more about their heart than they had ever revealed to anyone before. For days, they found themselves replaying every meaningful memory. Not because they wanted to live in the past, but because they wanted to understand it. They remembered the conversations that made them laugh until they forgot their worries. They remembered the quiet support that came during difficult seasons. They remembered the moments when a simple act of kindness spoke louder than 1,000 promises. Looking back, they realized that the strongest connections are rarely built through dramatic moments. They grow quietly through trust, respect, patience, and the willingness to keep showing up when life becomes difficult. Listen carefully, because this changes everything. They finally admitted that the shocking request wasn't something impossible or unbelievable. It was something they had been too afraid to ask for all along. They wanted honesty without pretending. They wanted understanding without assumptions. They wanted one conversation where neither person had to hide behind pride or fear. They realized that asking for sincerity requires far greater courage than remaining silent ever could. That understanding transformed everything they believed about strength. As another quiet evening arrived, they sat alone with their thoughts and asked themselves one final question. If tomorrow gives me one chance to speak openly, will I use it? The answer came without hesitation. Yes. Not because they knew how the story would end, but because they had finally learned that peace comes from expressing your truth with kindness, regardless of the outcome. That realization lifted a burden they had been carrying for far too long. Stay till the end, because something huge is waiting for you. They stopped trying to predict every possible response. Instead, they focused on becoming someone who could accept every response with grace. They realized that maturity isn't about controlling what other people feel. It's about taking responsibility for your own honesty, your own compassion, and your own willingness to communicate with respect. That quiet lesson became more valuable than any answer they thought they were searching for. What happened next changed everything. As they prepared themselves emotionally, they noticed how much they had grown. They were no longer the person who allowed fear to close every door. They had become someone willing to listen before judging, to understand before reacting, and to appreciate before assuming. Looking back, they smiled at how much wisdom had grown from seasons that once felt nothing but painful. Every difficult chapter had quietly prepared them for this moment of clarity. Listen carefully. The request they carried wasn't a demand for guarantees or promises. It was an invitation to share honesty. An invitation to acknowledge the lessons both people had learned. An invitation to recognize that genuine human connection deserves openness, even when certainty doesn't exist. They understood that sometimes the bravest thing anyone can say is simply, "Can we have an honest conversation?" Those words may seem small, but they have the power to change lives when spoken with humility and sincerity. As the morning sun began to rise, they no longer feared what the future might hold. They understood that whether the next chapter brought renewed connection, mutual understanding, or peaceful closure, they would walk into it with integrity. They would know they had chosen truth over silence, courage over hesitation, and gratitude over regret. That realization filled them with a calm they had never experienced before, because for the first time, their heart and their actions were finally moving in the same direction. So before this chapter comes to an end, remember the most important lesson hidden within this journey. The greatest preparation is not knowing exactly what tomorrow will bring. The greatest preparation is becoming the kind of person who can face tomorrow with honesty, compassion, patience, and hope. Sometimes the most surprising request isn't extraordinary at all. Sometimes it's simply asking for understanding, offering forgiveness, or choosing to speak from the heart after a long season of silence. And as they took one final deep breath before stepping into whatever came next, they realized that they were no longer waiting for life to change them. They had already changed. With a peaceful spirit, a grateful heart, and the courage to embrace whatever tomorrow might bring, they stepped forward into a future that no longer felt frightening, but full of possibility, healing, and the quiet promise of a brand new beginning. My beloved child, don't skip. Listen carefully, because this is the chapter where everything they had been preparing for finally began to unfold. For so long, they believed the hardest part would be finding the courage to speak. But they soon discovered that the hardest part was standing at the edge of a new beginning, knowing there was no way to predict what would happen next. Their heart was no longer asking for certainty. It was asking for the strength to be honest, no matter where that honesty would lead. Stay till the end, because what they realized during this quiet season became the greatest lesson of their entire journey. As the days passed, they stopped trying to rehearse every possible conversation. They accepted that no perfectly planned speech could ever replace genuine sincerity. Instead of searching for flawless words, they focused on speaking from the heart. They wanted every sentence to reflect gratitude instead of fear, respect instead of pride, and understanding instead of assumptions. That simple decision changed everything. The more authentic they became, the lighter their heart began to feel. They realized that peace doesn't come from saying everything perfectly. It comes from saying what truly matters with kindness. Listen carefully, because this changes everything. One afternoon, while looking back through old memories, they smiled instead of feeling sadness. They remembered moments that had once seemed ordinary but now carried extraordinary meaning. They remembered shared laughter that made difficult days easier. They remembered quiet conversations that offered comfort without anyone realizing how important they would become. They understood that life is rarely changed by dramatic events alone. More often, it is transformed by countless small moments of genuine care that slowly shape a person's heart over time. Stay till the end, because something huge is waiting for you. They finally recognized that the request they wanted to make had never been about changing the past. It was about honoring everything they had learned because of it. They wanted to express appreciation that had remained unspoken for too long. They wanted to acknowledge the strength, patience, and kindness they had come to admire. Most of all, they wanted to stop allowing silence to speak on their behalf. They understood that even if tomorrow remained uncertain, honesty would always leave them with peace rather than regret. As evening arrived, they sat quietly and reflected on how much they had grown. The person who once feared vulnerability had learned that openness creates stronger connections than perfection ever could. The person who once avoided difficult conversations had discovered that respectful honesty often leads to healing, regardless of the outcome. Every lesson they had learned through disappointment had quietly become a source of wisdom. Instead of seeing obstacles, they now saw opportunities to become more compassionate, more patient, and more understanding. What happened next changed everything. They realized that they no longer needed every answer before taking the next step. They had spent years believing confidence came from certainty, but now they understood that real confidence comes from living according to your values even when the future remains unknown. That realization gave them incredible freedom. They no longer feared making mistakes because they knew they would always choose sincerity, accountability, and kindness. Those qualities became the compass guiding every decision they made. Listen carefully. There was one final discovery waiting for them beneath everything else. The greatest request they could ever make wasn't asking someone to promise forever. It was asking for one honest opportunity to understand each other with open hearts. Whether that conversation led to renewed friendship, reconciliation, mutual respect, or peaceful closure, they knew it would be meaningful because it would be built on truth rather than assumptions. They finally understood that authentic communication is one of the greatest gifts people can offer each other. As another sunrise filled the sky, they felt something they hadn't experienced in a very long time: hope without pressure. They no longer believed they had to control every chapter of the story. Instead, they trusted that living with integrity would always lead them toward peace, regardless of the destination. Every lesson had prepared them for this moment. Every challenge had strengthened their character. Every season of silence had taught them the value of speaking with wisdom and listening with compassion. So before this chapter closes, there is one message they hope will stay with you. Prepare your heart not for perfect outcomes, but for meaningful moments. Be ready to express gratitude while there is still time. Be ready to forgive when forgiveness brings peace. Be ready to listen before assuming, to appreciate before losing the opportunity, and to choose courage over fear whenever life gives you the chance. Because sometimes the most life-changing request isn't extraordinary at all. Sometimes it's simply asking for one sincere conversation that allows two hearts to leave behind silence and step forward with honesty, understanding, and hope. And as they took that first courageous step into the unknown, they realized that no matter what tomorrow would bring, they had already received the greatest gift of all. A heart no longer controlled by fear, but guided by truth, gratitude, and the quiet confidence that every sincere beginning has the power to create a beautiful new chapter. My beloved child, don't skip. Listen carefully, because this is the moment they almost turned around. They had come so far, learned so much, and carried every lesson from the past into this new chapter. Yet as the moment of truth drew closer, old fears quietly whispered to them once again. What if it's too late? What if everything has already changed? Those questions echoed through their mind, trying to convince them that silence was still the safer choice. But deep inside, another voice had grown stronger, a voice that reminded them that living honestly is always better than living with endless regret. Stay till the end, because the next decision would become one of the most important choices they had ever made. For a long time, they believed courage meant never feeling afraid. Now they understood that courage is choosing to move forward even while your hands are shaking. They realized that every meaningful step in life carries uncertainty. No one is promised the outcome they hope for. But everyone is given the opportunity to choose integrity over fear. That understanding filled them with a quiet confidence they had never experienced before. They no longer wanted to wait for the perfect moment because they had discovered that perfect moments rarely exist. They are created by people who decide that honesty matters more than comfort. Listen carefully, because this changes everything. They began remembering the smallest details they had once overlooked. The kindness that appeared during difficult days. The encouragement that arrived when hope seemed far away. The conversations that left them feeling understood without needing many words at all. Those memories reminded them that genuine connection is built slowly, through trust, respect, patience, and consistency. Looking back, they realized that the strongest relationships are often shaped by countless ordinary moments rather than extraordinary events. Stay till the end, because something huge is waiting for you. They finally stopped asking themselves whether they deserved another chance to express gratitude. Instead, they asked a far more meaningful question. If I remain silent today, will I be proud of that decision years from now? The answer was immediate. No. They understood that while they could not rewrite yesterday, they could choose how tomorrow would remember them. That realization became the final push they needed to stop letting hesitation control their life. As another peaceful evening settled in, they looked toward the horizon and felt an unfamiliar sense of calm. The future no longer seemed like something to fear. It had become an open road filled with opportunities to live differently than before. They promised themselves they would no longer postpone kindness, delay appreciation, or assume there would always be more time. Every sincere conversation became precious because they had learned how quickly opportunities can pass when fear is allowed to take the lead. What happened next changed everything. They realized the shocking request they had carried in their heart was never about asking someone else to change. It was about asking for one chance to share truth without masks, expectations, or pride. They wanted to say thank you for every lesson. They wanted to acknowledge every moment of patience and understanding they had once taken for granted. They wanted to express appreciation before another season of silence had the chance to grow. In that moment, they understood that honesty itself was the greatest gift they could offer. Listen carefully. As they prepared for whatever came next, they no longer measured success by the response they might receive. Success became much simpler than that. Success meant speaking with sincerity. Success meant listening with compassion. Success meant walking away knowing they had acted with integrity, regardless of what the future held. That shift in perspective brought a peace that no outcome alone could ever provide. They had finally stopped trying to control the ending and started focusing on becoming the kind of person who could face any ending with grace. The days that followed felt different. Every sunrise carried possibility instead of pressure. Every conversation became an opportunity to practice patience. Every challenge became another reminder that growth never truly ends. They discovered that healing is not a destination you reach once and never revisit. It is a daily choice to let gratitude become louder than regret, kindness become stronger than pride, and hope become greater than fear. Those choices slowly transformed every part of their life. So before this chapter comes to an end, there is one final truth they hope never leaves your heart. The greatest preparation is not knowing what another person will say. The greatest preparation is becoming someone who can speak honestly, listen openly, forgive wisely, and appreciate deeply. Because when life finally places you in front of the conversation you've been waiting for, your greatest strength will not be having all the answers. Your greatest strength will be having the courage to show up as your truest self. And as they took one final deep breath and stepped into that long-awaited moment, they smiled. Not because every fear had disappeared, but because they finally understood that the most meaningful journeys are never defined by certainty. They are defined by the quiet courage to keep choosing truth, compassion, and hope, one sincere step at a time. That realization became the beginning of a future brighter than anything they had once imagined, proving that a heart guided by honesty will always find its way toward peace. My beloved child, don't skip. Listen carefully, because this is the chapter where the waiting finally begins to make sense. After carrying the weight of unanswered questions for so long, they realized something that completely changed the direction of their heart. They were no longer standing still, trapped between fear and hope. They were finally moving forward. Every lesson, every sleepless night, every moment of silence had quietly prepared them for this exact season. Stay till the end, because what they discovered next became the greatest surprise of all. For the first time in what felt like forever, they stopped looking at the clock, wondering when the perfect moment would arrive. Instead, they focused on becoming the kind of person who would recognize a meaningful moment when it came. They understood that patience is not about doing nothing. Patience is about continuing to grow while life unfolds one chapter at a time. Every morning became an opportunity to choose gratitude. Every evening became a chance to reflect without regret. Slowly, they realized they were no longer being controlled by what they couldn't change. They were being strengthened by what they had learned. Listen carefully, because this changes everything. There came a quiet afternoon when they found an old journal hidden inside a drawer. As they turned each page, they read words written by a version of themselves who had been overwhelmed by uncertainty. Those pages spoke of fear, confusion, hesitation, and unanswered questions. But as they compared those words to the person they had become, they smiled. They realized they were no longer that same person. Growth had happened so gradually that they hadn't even noticed it. The pain that once felt unbearable had quietly become wisdom, and the silence that once felt endless had become the foundation of their inner peace. Stay till the end, because something huge is waiting for you. A thought suddenly crossed their mind that they could no longer ignore. What if the greatest gift wasn't getting everything I wanted? What if the greatest gift was becoming someone capable of appreciating whatever life places in front of me? That single thought changed everything. It reminded them that genuine happiness isn't built only on outcomes. It's built on character, perspective, and the ability to find meaning even in life's most difficult seasons. As another evening settled over the horizon, they stepped outside and took a deep breath. The air felt different. The silence felt different. Even the stars seemed to shine with a quiet reminder that life continues moving forward, whether we are ready or not. In that peaceful moment, they made one final decision. They would stop allowing yesterday's fears to steal tomorrow's opportunities. They would no longer let hesitation silence words that deserve to be spoken with kindness and respect. That decision brought a calm they had searched for in countless places but had only now discovered within themselves. What happened next changed everything. They realized that the request they had been preparing to make wasn't only for another person. It was also a promise to themselves. A promise to live honestly. A promise to appreciate deeply. A promise to never again ignore the quiet voice inside their heart that always guided them toward compassion rather than pride. That promise became stronger than any uncertainty they still carried. It became the foundation of every step they would take from this day forward. Listen carefully. They finally understood that life's most meaningful moments rarely announce themselves with dramatic signs. They arrive quietly. A sincere conversation. A heartfelt apology. A moment of forgiveness. a simple expression of gratitude. Those ordinary moments carry extraordinary power because they reveal who we truly are. They realized that no matter how the future unfolded, choosing kindness would never be the wrong decision. Choosing honesty would never be wasted. Choosing hope would always leave the heart lighter than choosing fear. Days turned into weeks, and they noticed something remarkable. The peace they had found wasn't temporary. It stayed with them. It appeared in the way they spoke to others, in the patience they showed during difficult conversations, and in the appreciation they expressed for even the smallest acts of kindness. The transformation was complete. They were no longer waiting for life to begin. They were fully living it, one grateful moment at a time. So before this chapter comes to an end, there is one final message they hope remains with you forever. Never underestimate the power of quiet growth. Never believe that silence means nothing is happening. Some of life's greatest transformations take place where no one else can see them. Every lesson you learn, every act of forgiveness, every moment of courage, and every choice to speak with sincerity becomes another step toward the person you were always meant to become. And as they looked toward the sunrise with a peaceful smile, they understood that heaven's greatest preparation was never about predicting tomorrow. It was about shaping a heart that could face tomorrow with unwavering faith, genuine compassion, lasting gratitude, and the quiet confidence that every new beginning starts with one brave decision to live honestly. That realization became the true miracle they had been searching for all along, and it would continue guiding them through every beautiful chapter still waiting to be written. My beloved child, don't skip. Stay with me until the very last word, because this is where every chapter of the journey finally comes together. Every moment of silence, every unanswered question, every lesson learned through patience has been leading to this beautiful ending. It was never about knowing exactly what tomorrow would bring. It was about becoming the kind of person who could face tomorrow with honesty, courage, and a heart full of gratitude. Listen carefully, because this final realization changes everything. As they looked back over the path they had traveled, they no longer saw broken pieces. They saw a complete story. Every difficult season had strengthened them. Every misunderstanding had taught them compassion. Every goodbye had shown them the importance of appreciating people while they are still part of our lives. They understood that nothing they had experienced was wasted. Even the painful chapters had quietly prepared them to become wiser, kinder, and more patient than they had ever been before. For the first time, they smiled at the past instead of fearing it. Stay till the end, because something beautiful is waiting for you. They finally understood that the shocking request they had been carrying wasn't about asking for impossible promises. It was something much simpler and far more powerful. It was a request for honesty. A request for understanding. A request to leave behind assumptions and replace them with sincere conversation. They realized that the strongest relationships are not built by people who never make mistakes. They are built by people who are willing to learn, forgive, communicate, and grow together with humility and respect. Listen carefully, because this changes everything. The peace they had searched for wasn't waiting inside another person's answer. It had already begun growing inside their own heart. The moment they stopped allowing fear to control their choices, everything became lighter. They no longer needed every outcome to be perfect. They only needed to know that they had acted with kindness, spoken with sincerity, and treated others with dignity. That realization became their greatest victory, because true peace always begins within. As another sunrise painted the sky with new light, they made one final promise to themselves. They would never again postpone gratitude. They would never allow pride to silence words that deserve to be spoken. They would never assume tomorrow was guaranteed when appreciation could be shared today. Every conversation would become an opportunity to encourage someone. Every challenge would become an opportunity to grow. Every new day would become another chance to live with purpose instead of fear. What happened next changed everything. The weight they had carried for so long quietly disappeared. In its place came hope. Steady, calm, and unshakable. They discovered that life becomes far more beautiful when we stop chasing certainty and start embracing sincerity. Every lesson had led them here. Every disappointment had prepared them for wisdom. Every quiet moment had become the foundation for a future built on integrity, patience, and compassion. Looking ahead, they no longer saw obstacles. They saw opportunities to become an even brighter light in the lives of others. Listen carefully. There is one final truth they hope you never forget. The greatest miracle is not that life always unfolds exactly as we imagine. The greatest miracle is that the human heart has the ability to heal, to forgive, to grow, and to love again after seasons of uncertainty. That is the gift hidden inside every difficult chapter. When we choose kindness instead of bitterness, gratitude instead of regret, and hope instead of fear, we discover a strength that no hardship can take away. So before this story ends, let these words remain with you. If someone has brought goodness into your life, let them know they matter. If you have learned an important lesson, carry it forward with humility. If you have the opportunity to speak with honesty, do not let fear steal your voice. Life is too precious to leave appreciation unspoken or forgiveness delayed. The moments that truly matter are often the quiet ones, shared with sincerity and an open heart. And now the final page gently closes, not with sadness, but with peace. The journey that began with uncertainty ends with clarity. The silence that once felt heavy has become a reminder of how powerful honest words can be. The heart that once trembled with fear now walks forward with quiet confidence, knowing that every challenge has become part of a greater purpose. No matter what tomorrow brings, they are ready. Not because they know every answer, but because they have become someone who chooses truth over fear, compassion over pride, gratitude over regret, and hope over despair. This is not the end of love. This is not the end of hope. This is the beginning of a new chapter where every sunrise carries fresh possibilities, every conversation holds the chance for understanding, and every act of kindness leaves a mark that time can never erase. They take one final look toward the horizon, smile with complete peace, and step into the future with unwavering faith, knowing that the most beautiful endings are the ones that inspire even more beautiful beginnings. And with that quiet smile, they finally understand that the greatest blessing was never simply finding someone special, it was becoming the kind of person who could bring light, healing, and love wherever life leads. That is the ending their heart had been searching for all along, and it is more beautiful than they ever dreamed possible.